Hi, and welcome to another installment of my reading of Boston Accent. Boston Accent is available on Amazon.com. And once again, Boston Accent is an adult read. Contains adult subject matter. It's not for children. All right, let's pick up where we left off. Boston Accent. We're still in college. Haven't got kicked out yet. I decided not to live in Boston during my second year of college and chose instead to commute by bus. The bus stop was a 3-mile walk from my parents, and the bus terminal in Boston was 1 block from the subway. I no longer wanted to deal with my cousins or their roach-infested apartment, nor they with me, as there had been a couple of incidents. One incident occurred on the evening when I returned to the apartment with a few beers in me. My cousin Brentley started giving me a bunch of shit, and I was in no mood. He was now a senior in high school and was well over 6 foot tall, and on the way to his current height of 6'9". In addition to his height, he outweighed me by close to 50 pounds. He used his size to intimidate people, and he had turned into quite the bully. I was broke and starving as I looked in the fridge for something to eat. It was something I did once in a while when I had been drinking, even though I was told that food was off limits to me in the apartment. I would be discreet about it and only take a small amount of food, and only when everyone was asleep or not at home. But it was the last month I would spend here, and I was developing an attitude. While I'm looking in the fridge, Brantley says, "Close the door. That's not your food." I ignore him and keep looking. He stands up from the couch, walks into the kitchen, and says, "Shut the fucking door." I reach into the fridge and grab the remains of their Sunday roast, figuring I could slice some meat off this and make a sandwich if there's any bread. As I set the roast on the counter and step towards the bread box, Brantley grabs me by the collar of my shirt and yanks me over to where the roast is sitting on the counter and says, "Put it back." I reach down between Brantley's legs and begin to squeeze his crotch as hard as I can, while Brantley yells in pain and tries to pull away. Brantley has 2 younger sisters, and the older sister says, "I'm calling Mama," as she runs for the phone to telephone my aunt at work. I release my grip on Brantley, and as he slowly straightens up, I begin punching him repeatedly with body shots until he falls to the floor. I did not want to put any marks on his face, as I was sure my aunt would throw me out as soon as she saw them. I go back to making my sandwich, and Brantley's sister hands me the phone saying, "My mother wants to talk to you." I get on the phone, and my aunt is pissed off that she is being bothered at work. She says she will discuss this matter with me when she gets home, along with another issue she has with me. Brantley never lays a hand on me again until another incident occurs during a wedding reception 11 years later. My aunt comes home, and the other issue she has with me are about my pot plants. My mother and her sisters are pretty open-minded about weed, and at least one of them smokes. I asked my aunt if I could grow plants in the house, which would mean placing seeds in with existing plants that she has in pretty much every window in the house. The seeds were healthy, and the plants, with proper watering and plenty of sunshine, flourished in the apartment. We had not discussed any limits on the number of plants, so I went to town. Although the average height was just under a foot high, there were 90 of them. My aunt lets me know that the plants have to go, and I decide to go as well. I call a friend to come get me. We load all the plants into his trunk. I grab what few belongings I have and leave the apartment for the last time. With my new transportation situation being the train and the bus, it is important for me to keep an eye on what time it is. The last bus leaves the terminal at 11:15 p.m., and I have to make it or spend the night in Boston, and I no longer have a place to stay here. Although I am now allowed back in the dorms, my friend Slick is now living off campus. I am not really tight with anyone in the dorms this year, and will be out in the cold if I needed a place to stay. Slick is renting a 3rd-floor apartment in a triple-decker 3 miles from the square with 2 students from another school. I have changed my lifestyle quite a bit in my second year in college, and I usually head right to the bus terminal at the end of my last class. I have Rachel in my life now, and I make every effort to see her during the week. One night I had to stay late to attend a classical music recital for a music appreciation class I was taking, and I ended up in the dorm drinking with some classmates that had to attend the same recital. The recital didn't start until 8:30 p.m. at Symphony Hall, which was a 10-minute walk from the square. My last class ended at 3 p.m., so I had a lot of time to kill, which turned into drinking. Shocker. It was around 7 p.m., and I figured Rachel had finished dinner with her family, so I decided to give her a call from a payphone in the dorm. Every floor had one phone, and when it rang, whoever was in earshot would answer it, and then bang on a door to locate the person the call was for. I call Rachel, and the operator tells me to deposit a shitload of change, which takes almost everything I have. Rachel's little brother answers the phone and calls Rachel to the phone. As soon as Rachel gets on the phone, a computer voice starts telling me to deposit more money. I'm trying to give Rachel the phone number to call me back, but she can't hear me over the computer voice, which is threatening to disconnect me, which it does, before Rachel can get the number. Without thinking it through, and with a lot of beers in me, I ripped the receiver and the cord out of the phone. I should have got rid of it right there and then, but instead, I shoved it into my inside jacket pocket. No one sees me do it, and I go back to the dorm room where my classmates are, and I keep the phone incident to myself. Finally, it's time to head to the concert, and we head to the dorm elevator. As the doors open and I step out, I remember the phone. I pull it out from my jacket and I hand it to a student that's getting on the elevator, and I say, "It's for you." Turns out the phone was from his floor, and he was expecting a call from home, which was the Virgin Islands. And he was pissed. He went right to security, and the next day I received another letter stating I was barred from the dorms for life. Life! After sealing my fate with dorm life, we continued on to the concert. As soon as we get there and find our seats up in the balcony, I go looking for the bathroom. As I approached the bathroom, I noticed a table positioned on the outside wall in between the men's and ladies' room. On this table was a pocketbook, and no one was around. I felt this was very odd, being we're in the city and there's a lot of crime. I wonder what would possess a person to leave this here. I've never considered myself a thief, and on the rare occasion when I did steal something, it wasn't against an individual, but against a corporation. On this night, I decided to make an exception. I felt like the woman that left the purse needed to be taught a valuable lesson. I know what you're thinking. Hey. I reach in her purse, grab her wallet, took just the cash, and put the wallet back. I then darted into the men's room to take a leak and count my money, which is around $40. Not a lot, but it was $40 more than I had. I keep the purse incident to myself as the curtain goes up and the concert begins. At intermission, I buy a round of beers for my friends and check the time. I would have to hustle to catch the last bus out of the terminal, or I was going to be in trouble. As the concert ends, I catch a train to the bus terminal with time to spare. What I don't do is check the destination of the bus, which is express to Hyannis on Cape Cod. I walk to the back of the bus and pass out cold. When I wake up, all the lights are on and the driver is walking the aisle, picking up anything that the passengers have left behind. I look out the window and see we are in a bus terminal I am not familiar with. When I ask the driver, "Where are we?" and he says Hyannis, the first thing I say is, "Fuck." The next thing I say is, "When is the next bus to Pineyville?" And he says 6 a.m. It was now 1:30 a.m. And I say, "Fuck," again and get off the bus. I do the only thing I feel I can do and go to a payphone and call my parents to come get me. Ralph shows up 2 hours later, and he's way beyond pissed off, and I don't care. I am just glad to be going home to a warm bed. In retrospect, getting on the wrong bus could be perceived as karma for the not-so-nice things I did that night. Then again, it could just be stupidity fueled by alcohol. You make the call. The week after the phone boss purse incident, I ran into Slick between classes, and he said he was having a few people over to his new apartment for a party, and he wanted me to come. It was on a Saturday night, and I asked if I could bring a few friends, and he said no problem. So I invited Kevin, Brett, and a guy who went to school with Rachel named Donnie. I decided not to invite Rachel and make it a boys' night out for a couple of reasons. The first reason was I was spending so much time either with school or with Rachel that I hadn't seen much of my buddies. The second reason was the area of Boston that Slick was living in wasn't the safest neighborhood. I didn't want to put Rachel in a potentially dangerous situation. The four of us show up at Slick's around 9 p.m. After drinking all the way in from the South Shore and having a few before we left. Oh, hello? The four of us show up at Slick's around 9 p.m. after drinking all the way in from the South Shore and having a few before we left. Period. As we're climbing the stairs, who wrote this? As we're climbing the stairs, making our way to the third floor, we noticed that the occupants of the second floor have parked bicycles on their landing that they had to squeeze by to get to the third floor. Apparently, they were concerned that the bikes would get damaged or stolen outside. It was a great night weather-wise for the party. As we head out to the balcony, where Slick is getting a beer from the keg. It was unusually warm for late September, what we New Englanders call Indian summer. Everyone was enjoying themselves, and people were getting pretty high between the keg and the weed that was going around. After a couple of hours, someone starts banging on Slick's front door. When Slick answers the door, he's met by his downstairs neighbor of Hispanic origin and several of his friends and relatives. They are irate and yelling with a combination of English and Spanish. Slick is a guy that is always just as cool as a cucumber, and he calmly asks them, "What's your fucking problem?" It turns out someone has taken their two bicycles that were on the landing, and they think someone in Slick's apartment has something to do with it. Slick tells them, "We don't have your bikes," and invites them in to look. One of them says in bad broken English, "We know the bikes aren't here. Your friends took them." Slick says, "What friends? Everyone is here, right?" As he looks around the room. Now everyone seems to be taking a head count, and Slick walks over to me and says, "Where are all your buddies?" I point to the porch, and Slick goes out to look. He comes back, and under his breath, so the neighbor can't hear him, says, "Brett and Donnie aren't here." As soon as he says that, I know they have the bikes. Brett has a reputation for pulling crazy stunts, and this has him written all over it. I tell Slick, "I'll find them." And I grab Kevin off the porch and fill him in on what's going on. Meanwhile, the neighbor has stormed back down the steps yelling, "I'm calling the police! Policia!" I apologize to Slick while trying to explain that Brett and Donnie are just joyriding and will bring the bikes back. They have no reason to steal them, especially since Brett's car is parked right across the street. As we make our way down the stairs towards the street, the building is filled with the echo of angry Spanish people yelling. As we exit the building, there's a mob of non-English speaking people gathered next to the road. Apparently, the occupants of the first floor apartment are related to the people on the second floor in the building next door as well. Shocker. Kevin, Slick, and I look at all the people yelling and looking at us, and we're all thinking the same thing. This is about to go from bad to worse. Just then, the crowd turns away from us, starts pointing and yelling, and I see Brett and Donnie riding down the street towards us. Slick says, "Oh shit, here we go," as the three of us try to get to them before the crowd does. Okay, we're going to stop it right there. Don't you hate that? But we're on a time constraint, and our time's just about up. So you're going to have to tune in tomorrow and see what the hell happens here. I'm Mark Mattioli, and I'm reading Boston Accent. Ciao.